Well, it's time for episode 309 of the 3 Point Podcast presented by the Memorial Healthcare Wellness Center. Check out memorialhealthcare.org for details and everything that they offer, including kids' swimming lessons. I said this is episode 309, guys. It just kind of hit me earlier this weekend. We started this in 2017. We're on our 7th year. How can that be? 7 years.
Time flies when you're having fun, right? That's the whole thing.
So. We're having fun and we're showing up every week pretty much. So yeah, we're
having fun and we're getting some cool guests like the guests that we're going to have tonight that I'm sure you're going to mention.
Absolutely. Before I mention them though, I just want to again say we're here because of our other sponsors, including AZee Branding Solutions, Jacobs Insurance Agency, Kori Shook and Associates Real Estate Services, Nelson House Funeral Homes, Rivals Taphouse and Grille, and Success Group Mortgage and Servicing. And you mentioned it, our special guest tonight will be Gus Macker himself, Scott McNeal. It's their 50th anniversary coming up. We're going to dig deep into the Gus Macker, the world famous Gus Macker 3-on-3 situation, tournament. I don't know what you call it, business.
Yeah.
It's just phenomenal what they've done in 50 years. But as we do every week, we play a little catch up, and I understand somebody returned to the neighborhood, Jared.
That's a good way to put it. Yeah, the crazy cat lady, who, if you guys remember from maybe probably 2 months ago at this point, who scared the bejesus out of me and accused me of basically injuring her cats when I had never touched them. It's funny, when I was growing up and even recently, like, you always hear about people having like problems with their neighbors. And I've always been like, I don't understand why that's a thing. I've never understood that. I don't get why it seems to be, no matter who it is, where it is, people always seem to get in arguments with their neighbors about the dumbest things. Well, I had one come up with the cat lady stopping by. So first off, I was just chilling at my house. This is a midday Sunday, relaxing, watching NBA playoffs. I hear a knock on the door. I look out the window and I can't see anybody there. She's like so short that I'm looking out my window. It's like there's nobody there. I'm like, what's going on? So I like turn around and walk away again. Figured, maybe I didn't hear anything. Hear knock again. Oh God, I think I know who this is. Go back, open up the door. She's standing there. We have like a pretty common again. It kind of, I think it started again with the cat thing. Basically, we rehashed the same exact conversation we had 2 months ago with this whole cat ordeal. Finally, it was one of those conversations where she said bye probably like 10 times before she actually like left. Finally, at the very end, she sneaks this in there. So this is honestly a good question for you, Ted. You, Matt, as well. I mean, you obviously have lived in a house before. Now you're kind of in like an apartment or wherever. But anyway, so this house, how it's set up is like, so we each have our fenced in backyards. Beyond the fenced in backyards is kind of like this little like wildlife area, almost probably 20 by 20 wide. Mm-hmm. And she basically says, like she pointed out back there, like, yeah, we've been having all this nice, new growth. But one thing I've noticed is that there's a dead tree back there that's fallen over. I'm like, I didn't even notice that. Like, where is it? She like points at it. I kind of like looking for my back deck, like looking at it out the window. Oh yeah, I see it back there. So then I'm like, I kind of think about it. She's like, yeah, I don't know. I mean, do you want me to take care of it? Or like how she worded it was like, I'm going to get some people out here to take care of it. Like, you want me to take care of that take that care of that as well? I was like, I don't know. Let me talk to the landlord. So then like, she finally leaves after about 15 minutes. I go back there and take a look. The tree root is in her side of the yard and it's tipped over into my yard. So as I'm like looking at this, like, well, dude, this isn't even technically, I don't even think this is anybody's yard. I think it's like nobody's yard. It's just a waste area in between the people that live behind me. And then I go out and do some digging. No, it's not even in my yard. It's tipped over. But I guess I don't understand what the actual ruling is. Is that technically my yard? Is that her yard? Whose responsibility is that? Does anybody probably even own that land? Why would you make a fence that cuts off your land, like 20 feet short? So just the whole thing was irritating me. Like, to me, how I read it is, I'm not gonna say anything to my landlord. I'm not gonna say anything to anybody. I'm not gonna go out there and freaking chop it up with a chainsaw myself. Hell no, I'm not doing that. Basically, my interpretation of this is somebody clearly a little off the rocker, just stares and looks out at this, 10 trees out here in this wasteland area and obsesses over it. It's like, I'm not gonna do nothing about it. Am I crazy for doing that? Is that the wrong way to go about it? And first off, I guess for you answer that question, is this tree in my yard?
I mean, I think it depends on the property lines, first of all, because, yeah, some people do put a fence up before the edge of their property line. So that might actually be I know you don't own the house, but like your landlord's
Right.
land, it might actually be on their property line. So yeah, it might be your responsibility. But then there's always that weird, Ted, you know maybe more of the details than I do, but with if a tree falls from your neighbor's yard onto yours, like who's responsible for cleaning it up? And there's a bunch of weird stuff like that. So yeah. Do you need to contact the city or like your landlord? I don't know if you need to go that far, because if it's just this crazy cat lady that's worried about it, who
Yeah.
cares? But if it becomes a big issue, yeah, you guys might need to figure out who's responsible for this tree. I mean,
It's not like, here's what's funny about it. I'm like, I can imagine people listening and thinking this is like some 10-foot wide tree trunk. It's like a 3 inches of diameter like tree that's like not even laying on the ground yet. It's like at a 45-degree angle, like barely has started falling out of like its root in the ground. It's like, what are we talking about with this damn thing? I didn't even notice it back there. It's like blends in with the shrubbery. It's like I said, I had to go back there and look at it to even see what she was talking about.
Yeah, it's one of those deals. First of all, like you've already made clear, you're a renter, so it's not your responsibility no matter what. If I were you, I just freaking ignore it. But if you don't want to contact your landlord, but it's his responsibility to either take care of it if it's on his land or find out from the city what to do with it. The city might just come out, hack it down, just like they do tree limbs along the front street. But boy, what a non-controversy.
Yeah, I guess I don't know. Maybe you're expecting more. I don't. These are the boring everyday life of living in a neighborhood. Is what I'm realizing. Is these are what keep you going. These are what spice up the Sundays for you. So
yeah,
again,
suburban adult life.
I try not to bother the landlords. It's like I don't want to come to them with this like request and then be like, dude, she's like crazy. Why are you even like, you know what I mean? Like I'm
right.
Or like I don't want to take too much credence into this stupid 20-minute conversation I had that maybe was just mumbo jumbo. I don't know.
I'd play it out. I'd just play it out. If she makes another big stink about it, then you might want to consider contacting your landlord. It doesn't mean it has to be any big deal. Just inform him. Hey, the neighbor lady complaining about a tree in the back. We're not sure whose land it's on. Just want to let you know. Period.
Right. And that might be as far as it goes. The one thing is, depending on your lease, it could be up to the tenant to clean it up. It depends on the
I thought about that. I probably should go back and relook at that. But it's like, it's crazy to me that's even a problem. Ted just got up and went. Maybe he's in contact with our next guest. But anyway, I don't know.
Is calling.
Have you had to deal with any like bad neighbors, Matt? And I mean, I used to
honestly, yeah, like in all my years of renting, because basically since I moved out high school, whether it was college or even whatever after college, all the years of renting, I've never had like terrible neighbors. You've had the ones that you just kind of avoid, stay away from, you don't interact with too much, but never like the horror stories that you hear some people talk about. So
I asked Matt, Uncle Ted, but what have you ever? I mean, you kind of seem like a ringleader for having some bad neighbors. Have you ever had any bad experiences?
No, I actually tell you the truth. It's in all my time, I've had really good neighbors. I've never had a bad neighbor, so I can't even relate to it. In fact, I had a tree go down in my backyard, the first house out here. And it was a big old pine tree that blew down. And, my neighbor and I, neither one of us could really tell whose land it was on. So we just both chopped it up, and piled up the wood. So we worked together on it. So I've had good neighbors, thank goodness. Well, speaking of good neighbors, guys, Scott McNeal, who runs the Gus Macker, the originator, good neighbors in all the towns they go in. And we're going to connect with him right after this. Well, it all started with 18 friends on a driveway in Lowell to becoming the granddaddy of all 3-on-3 basketball organizations, the Gus Macker, celebrating his golden anniversary as founder. Let's welcome Scott McNeal. Scott, it's been a while since we've chatted. I used to play in the Macker back in the heyday of the early to mid 90s, but looking back at it and just looking at you, how is 50 years possible with this?
It's kind of scary when you think about having to go through everything we did to try to get here. I mean, it's been a long haul to 50 years. We've enjoyed every moment, though.
So Ted kind of mentioned a little bit of the backstory, but for some of our listeners who aren't like Matt or Ted, who played in this tournament, numerous times, he mentioned how it kind of started with 18 friends for an $18 prize. what was the origin story of that first tournament? And I mean, 13 years later, you move it to Belding because it's growing so quickly. What was that like? And what was that first initial tournament like?
Well, the first initial tournament was just a bunch of guys that gathered in my parents' driveway. My mom and dad lived, or we lived as a family. I had a younger brother, Mitch, who at the time was a freshman. I was a junior in high school. And we lived about 2 blocks from the Lowell High School. In our court or driveway just happened to be a decent basketball hoop. And we just gathered there and socialized and played basketball. And really, kind of the gist of it is March Madness hit. And back then you didn't go on spring break like people do today. So we were trying to find out something to do. Still had the bug. Our Lowell teams were not very good, so we didn't go very far in districts, and decided that we would play for a tournament. Didn't really think we were going to do it very often, but we thought, if we play for money, we'll get away from what had been a stagnant competition in the driveway, playing the same guys over and over. So we just decided to play for money. Had a little draft in mom and dad's living room with 6 of the older of us, and we drafted the rest of the guys, and it got kind of carried away with all the stuff. The driveway became our mom and dad's driveway became our Hall of Fame. One of the guys was going into communications in a year or two in college, and so he had a video camera and called it the Macker Sports Network. And when we played in the driveway, I don't know if you guys were the same, but we played music all the time.
Oh,
So
yeah.
we called it WGUS. We just kind of got a little happy with goofing around. But anyway, that first tournament, one of the guys won, who was the last pick because he was the tallest guy, 6'3" in the neighborhood. Decent player, so we made him draft last. He won. We decided it was so much fun, we'll do it the next year. And so it went like that 2 or 3 years with just guys in the neighborhood or in the Lowell group. And at that point, we'd gone on to college. And so we decided, hey, why don't we let other people enter and you bring your own team versus us drafting and playing for $1 a head. And that's kind of where it really kind of grew really quickly because people came, and that's kind of how we got into dividing people by their age, height, and experience. We had known that one of my friends had said he was going to bring a college player. So we said, well, we're going to have 2 flights, those that are pretty good and the rest of us that are from the neighborhood that aren't.
Right.
And at the time he brought a 6'7" starting forward for Central Michigan's team, Leon Guyden, who was from Grand Rapids.
I remember him.
Pretty well-known guy.
Yeah.
Anyway, he kind of snuck him into the tournament, and we all freaked out that a college guy was going to play in our driveway. And we went to trophies because that was kind of humorous. The athletic director at Lowell called my brother, and by that time we'd gone on to college, called my brother and some of the others in and said, I think if the money got any higher, you might lose your amateur status. So, so a lot of what we did back then was just having fun, and it just kind of fell into this unique thing. And in those late 70s, early 80s, it was kind of a West Michigan hoop dream to go play in this neighborhood. And we had to roll from mom and dad's driveway to 2 or 3 courts out in the street because we were playing till 1, 2 o'clock at night in the driveway. Not enough game time in a weekend. And 2 or 3 courts became 5 courts, and it just kind of got carried away. At our peak in Lowell, which was in 1986, I think we had like 88 courts strung up and down the streets around mom and dad's house. It was pretty crazy at that point. We knew something wild was happening because everybody was coming and following us. They wanted other tournaments like this in their towns, or a couple professional groups came and we're going to run them. One was out of Dallas, was going to run a big one there, and somebody's going to run one somewhere else. So anyway, it was getting pretty big in the 80s there.
And then the rest is history, right? And it's still going today. I mean, like Jared mentioned, I played in the early 2000s. I graduated high school in 2003, and then a group of friends and we played 5 or 6 years in a row. We played up in Ludington, and we always just had a blast playing up there. And it seems like it was also probably still at the peak. You would obviously know the numbers. It was still at the peak in the early 2000s, kind of like what Ted was saying. But the way that you describe that, it sounds like stuff that me and my friends used to do back in high school. Get together in someone's backyard, draw up the bracket, like the March Madness bracket, and play a little basketball 3-on-3 tournament. You just turned yours into a huge phenomenon, basically, Gus Macker. The question I want to ask you, though, is, so I've played in Gus Macker. Our hometown, there's a festival in the summer. It's in the spring that used to have a big 3-on-3 tournament that I played in. I've played in one that was called Air It Out. I played in the Red Hacker that I was telling these guys about. That was really cool. So I've played in a number of 3-on-3 basketball tournaments, because it was a really big deal when I was that age, high school and college. Most of those have fallen off, though. Why has Gus Macker been able to, even if it's not the same as it was at its peak, why do you think Gus Macker has been able to hold on, even if the younger generation isn't as into 3-on-3 basketball, as my generation?
Yeah, I really think it's the fact that we're kind of carried away with it a little bit. The other ones had little niches. The Red Hacker had a dunk tournament going there, or a dunk court. There was other little things that I did. At Macker, we just kind of felt like those were cool other events that we really didn't think of as competitive, because we knew the Macker was going to be the big one. And so we kept building it up and playing off of the history. I mean, just things happen for us. One of the things that's happening this summer with our 50th is we've invited back the gentleman that wrote the Sports Illustrated article, Alexander Wolf, in 1985. And kind of what happened for us was, when that article came out, then we became more of a national name, and became more nationally known. And so we always kind of thought, okay, if we're going to be nationally, we better have the best baskets, the best basketballs, the best trophies, so that people live and die to play in our event. Even though we knew they're playing in these other ones, it was like they were a warm up for ours.
Right.
Yeah.
Today, I think longevity wise, part of it is myself and a few others are obsessed by it. So where other people probably got a little burned out, because you can get burned out from doing events. It really is easy. People working with the general public, if they don't win, they're upset. Back then, also, the other thing that hit 3-on-3 coming out of the early 2000s, as you talk, the Ludington event is definitely the most popular in modern times of Gus Macker. And that's because it has the beach and all this other stuff. But what hurt us, and hurt all 3-on-3s, is the physical roughness of the event. It just got crazy. You called your own fouls and violations, and we tried to make it like our neighborhood, which is what that was like. But when it got so popular, winning was everything, and people would change their teams and go get guys that look like they're on steroids or whatever, and so they'd win because they just physically abuse the other team. So kind of what we've done today is we've gone to game officials, and we actually blow whistle on all the courts, and the roughness factor isn't nearly what it was. So we see a resurgent in our brand, mainly because we've kind of become a family festival. And you'll see in my list of cities, I'm in a lot of small towns now, where back then I was in pretty big cities here in the Midwest. So I don't know that I have the exact answer, but I mean, we're just really kind of into it, and always thinking we're going to come up with the next idea that's going to be really cool and make ours different from the other people. So I think we've lasted because of that. And it was, it's just something that kind of happened, and continues to be that way even today's world. Even though it's not nearly as large, it still has an impact in the cities, whether it's raising money for a charity or closing down the downtown. Anyway, we're having a lot of fun doing it, but it's still a challenge for us.
I got kind of a two-parter here, Scott. Number one, my memory might be foggy, but we're three of us are from Corunna, right? In Shiawassee County. Now, is it my memory correct that you actually grew up originally in Durand before you moved to Lowell?
No, I actually grew up in Lowell, and I graduated from Central Michigan in '79.
Right.
And I was a school teacher with the idea of the whole story became, I was obsessed not only by the Macker, and I didn't realize how big the Macker was getting, especially in 79. I was going to be a coach because if I was too short, I was not athletic. So the only way I was going to stay in basketball is I was going to coach. So I went into teaching and coaching, didn't get a job immediately out of Central Michigan, came close in a number of places. And my ex basketball coach from Lowell, along with the ex-football coach, had become the principal and assistant principal in Durant.
There's the connection.
And they had next door to their offices was the community education department and rec department, and a person that was the rec director had just quit. And this is on a Friday. And they said, they'll give you the job if you're here Monday to start. So I went to the other side of the state thinking, well, I'm not going to get a teaching job right away. So I went about 2 years there, and then they eliminated the job, kind of pink slipped me. So I came back to Lowell at that point and started substituting. I ended up with a job in the 80s in Kent City, where I was a social studies teacher for 7th and 8th grade in girls and boys, girls varsity for a few years, boys JV for 6-7 years, basketball coach.
Very cool. Well, back to the Macker, you talked about the SI article in 85, and that kind of exposed you throughout the country as an organization, as something everybody wants to be a part of. And it really is a way of life, obviously, for you and your family and all the people that have participated in the Macker. When did you, after you moved from Lowell to Belding, where it's world headquarters now, when did you realize that, this can be a full-time gig and I can actually make some money at this?
Well, and the money never really quite got to the point, but 1987 is when I was still teaching in Kent City, and a gentleman from Grand Rapids owned an advertising agency. His name was Jim Messner, and his clients were Chevrolet dealers, especially around the Midwest. And so his kid had played in the tournament because he was from Lowell, and he said, I ought to take this to different cities, Cincinnati, Milwaukee, Decatur, Illinois, places where he had Chevrolet dealer groups, like the Greater Cincinnati Chevrolet dealers, the Gold Star Chevrolet dealers of Milwaukee. And they would fund the thing and make it a festival with them being the sponsors. And oh my gosh, that thing just went great. Basically what happened is I took a leave from teaching, and he hired me to work at his agency and run these events the first year or two, and also funded me initially to get the portable baskets that I had to have made. I actually had them made in Belgium overseas.
Oh my.
There's a lot of weird stories with Gus Macker. Just again,
we love it.
Most of these weird stories are honestly true that I just fell into. It wasn't like I sat down and go, oh God, let's plan this out. I mean, it's just same way as my very first sponsor, Jim Messner, and I had Nike give me some free t-shirts in Lowell. So he was with me and said, well, we got to get a sponsor to help fund some of this. So he calls Nike up out of the clear blue and tells who we are. And we had the Sports Illustrated thing, so people knew who we were, and said, do you want to sponsor this national tour that I'm going to start in 87 with Scott? And they didn't call back right away. So he said, well, who's right with Nike at the top? And back then Reebok was 1 or 2 with Nike all the time. So he called Reebok. Guy got on the phone, and close to $100,000 deal was done over the phone because he didn't want Nike to get it. It was really weird. So I just kind of fell into these kind of deals that made us viable nationally. Now, we had competitors on a national level through the 90s that were pretty large and really big. We kind of stayed more, and that kind of gets back to that question, why were you able to keep it going, is we kind of stayed closer to our roots. We still go and run the tournaments. I'm still at the events. Like this weekend, I'm in Mount Pleasant at Central Michigan. I go to an event almost every weekend. So I'm still out there doing it, where most of the people were removed or had agencies running them on a bigger level nationally.
Right.
We just kind of felt like it had to have more of the flavor of the neighborhood. So we kind of stayed with nonprofits and that kind of stuff.
You mentioned kind of some of the locations, like Ludington is the one that Matt has a great picture he's going to show in a little bit of, looking over the water. It's beautiful. You mentioned how it's kind of like you stick sort of more to your roots. What goes into picking the locations you go to? It seems like it's always at the cool spots, like whether it's on the downtown street or like I mentioned, Ludington, it's looking over the water. What goes into picking the right city or town, and how do you pick where you're going to actually put the courts in those towns?
And great question. A lot of people think we decide. Basically, it's these groups from these towns contact us, and we're almost like a franchise. We have our national headquarters, and I send a team out. We also train them, and we work with these groups year round, kind of consulting with them. But they kind of own it and agree to do a Macker system that we built.
Mhm.
And we have this Macker Bible on how to do the event. And we give them that, train them at a conference, work with them, and then we come in with our team and work with the local group. So it's the local groups saying, yeah, we'll do it, and we agree to what you're going to do and how the funding is going to work between us. So it's a partnership between us and could be a YMCA, a Boys and Girls Club,
Gotcha.
and so forth in East Town. So a lot of them are that way, and most of them that have decided to do a Macker really kind of go crazy, and that's why you see them in unique settings or cool places, is because they knew if they were going to do a Macker, they had to pay quite a bit more. It's a lot bigger process than maybe me just dropping in like Barnum and Bailey. I really, the development of that relationship is what makes it go.
Yeah, I mean, I know there's a lot that goes into it. A lot of volunteers involved too, and it's not just, hey, let's wheel some hoops in and have a little 3-on-3 tournament. I know it's quite the process to plan one of these things. Jared mentioned I was going to show a picture of Ludington. So one of my nephews, like I said, I played in Ludington quite a bit, and one of my nephews, he's like middle school age. He's playing right now with one of his buddies. They played last year. They're going to play this year in Ludington, and he wanted me to bring up this picture right here. I mean, is that not like the coolest setting
Right.
for a 3-on-3 basketball tournament right there with the Badger in the background? And that's his team right there, Lanesburg, in the red jerseys. That's actually my nephew dribbling the ball right there. Just the coolest setting. I mean, Ludington, obviously I'm a little biased, but it has to be one of the cooler settings for a 3-on-3 basketball tournament of any of these. He had a question for you that he wanted me to ask. How did you come up with Gus Macker? What does it mean? And then the second question was, do you have any tips for him to help his team win the whole tournament?
Love it.
Well, the easier answer is the Gus Macker thing was I was in middle school, and the shop teacher gave one of my friends the job of putting names on everybody's shop locker. And it was like 6th or 7th grade. And instead of putting a real name, he put like what he thought everybody's nickname should be. And people would call me Matt because my last name is McNeal.
Mhm.
And he had grabbed Gus and slapped it on the front of Mac. And at one time we thought it was one word, Gus Macker, and really with no other reasoning behind it, other than at the 25th, this guy gets up, who we put in the Hall of Fame because he gave me a nickname. And he said it was a famous Italian league legend, Gustav Macaroni. But I mean, really, the interesting part is Gus Ganakis was a head coach at Michigan State.
Right.
And so we wonder if he kind of said, I grabbed that name from there. And when Gus Ganakis heard that prior to his passing a few years back, oh my gosh, he was on the radio. I met with a few times because he was at a Lansing event we ran and stuff. And he was so honored that Gus Macker came after him a little bit, the name did. So anyway, that was awesome. Who was coaching when we were in high school and early college at Michigan State.
Well, you bring up Gus Macker again. That's branding. I mean, you got just a tremendous brand. I mean, look at the guy with the hat, the top hat. I mean,
great.
On all the T-shirts like
we
Matt has. I mean, where did all that fall into place, Scott? All the marketing and the branding. I mean, it's brilliant.
And again, I wish I could say I had an agency that did it. My mom, when we were doing this in the neighborhood, one of the reasons that it became bigger is Mom was a secretary at the Amway Corporation about 6 miles down the road at Ada.
Right.
And so she would type the stuff up on her corporate typewriter in between stuff and make copies that we take around to the classes and stuff, or to the kids in the school, as to whether they paid their dollar and all that. Well, 2 doors down from her was the artist from Amway. They had one artist back in that time frame, and she just went down and asked him one day, "Hey, would you do a quick drawing? My kids are running this event in the driveway." And that guy came up with it, and Mom gave him a t-shirt.
Wow.
And I still think to this day, it was when Magic Johnson was on Sports Illustrated with a top hat, cane kind of thing.
Oh,
He
yeah,
kind of looks
yeah.
like the Planter Peanut guy. I
Yeah.
still
Right.
think a little bit of that might have rubbed off on it, but
Hey.
just became, and we were with that stagnant peanut looking guy for years. And then we ran into another artist, young guy in Grand Rapids, who could animate him, make him look
awesome.
like any type of activity. I mean, he did about everything with the Gus Macker guy. And so now to this day, we're constantly revolving what he looks like. He's the same guy, but
Yeah.
we're always updating it to stay fresh with the kids. I mean, there's a lot of things we're doing. The other thing I was going to add is how to win at a Macker. Back in the day, the way to win is our program took your age first, your height second, and your experience third.
Yep.
So if you could find some guys that weren't very experienced but played a lot in the driveway that didn't quite make it to 6 foot,
Yep.
you ended up in a division of shorter guys in your age category that were least experienced. And so you ended up on a lesser court. That's kind of how to find them, is rather than somebody that's got a big reputation with maybe college background or something else, or height or something that kind of screwed you up in our computer formula.
Oh, trust me. I remember, sorry, Ted. I
No,
remember signing up again when I was playing in the early 2000s and talking to all my buddies who played, and people I went to Grand Valley State, people who went to school there, and they were also playing. There was strategy to building your team.
Oh, yeah.
You'd want to find the correct height. You don't just want a bunch of 6'5" guys, or you don't want a bunch of guys that play college ball. You know, there was a strategy to building your team. And I do remember you describing how it was back then when it was call your own fouls. It was when I was playing, I remember it was getting to the point where it was less about basketball and it was more about, could you outmuscle the other team? Could you could you have the stronger guys out on the court? And, there was still a lot of really good basketball being played. But I do remember when you guys switched to having some officials on the courts, I thought that might be a good move, because it got a little out of hand sometimes.
It really got it. Problem is not only did you need physical ones, but you needed intimidated personalities.
Yeah,
right. Had to be jerks
to
get their calls, which caused this friction, and it didn't become as much fun to even run them anymore.
Right.
That going to the officials was like Wrigley with lights on and stuff. We just didn't really like it at first, but it was something that we probably had to do to survive.
Yeah.
The other thing you'll see today that's really, really weird, and you would be very surprised when you walk out, is at our more developed events, Ludington, Belding, some of those, we're 70 to 80% under the age of 18.
Yeah.
Wow.
You stand at center court and you think, like in Belding, we had 30 some courts, let's say 35 courts. We had 30 courts of kids and only 5 of adults. It's like Disney World.
Yeah.
Which really makes it for us kind of what we wanted to be, because when it was getting rougher, our competitors and stuff sometimes played off the inner city, rough, tough, you got to win this kind of thing. And we were kind of going like, hey, we got to get away from this, because we're going to have a fight or a problem that's going to get out of control. And we're going to lose our image of being the hometown Midwest kind of property that started in somebody's driveway. So we kind of ran away from that a little bit. And thank goodness we did, because most of the ones that went away, that's why they went away. It just got too rough.
I view you, Scott, almost like a czar of basketball. I mean, you talk about how it's like coming up on 50 years, all the games you've seen, all the championship teams, not these 3-on-3s. 2-part question. Who's the best player you've ever seen play in one of these tournaments?
Oh,
Ted. Got to be Ted, right? Ted has
Ted was definitely the best.
he has the famous picture, that I'm sure Ted probably has. He played against Rob Pelinka.
That's
I mean,
right.
that has to be one of them, right?
Yeah.
My claim to fame.
I tell the story of going to these cities, and I'm in these pockets that are basketball pockets, and being in Peoria, Illinois, in their downtown when they had a lot of Illini players from all over the Midwest. They had a lot of guards and so forth and so on. So I got to think that like a Sean Livingston that played for the Warriors for a while. I'm trying to think of my main guy that played at DePaul. He was just an amazing offensive player, and I'm forgetting his name right now, but it had to come out of that area because when we were big, Peoria a couple times had 2 top men's divisions and actually had on their center court at one time, out of 8 players playing against each other, 7 of them were major college and a few were NBA or ex-NBA players. It was really, really like crazy. So I gotta say that's probably where that best player would have came from. I saw, but we've had ex-NBA players playing quite a bit. I was in Port Huron, Michigan, and we were with 2,500 teams on the campus of their little community college there and in the streets. And on one court, I couldn't get to the court because it was 10 people deep, and it was 7th to 8th graders. And I could see a hand up by the rim jumping around. I said, well, who's over there that everybody's watching it going? It's the next Magic Johnson, guy named Chris Webber.
Whoa.
Yep, that'll do it.
I saw a lot of kids in it. That's where Sean Livingston came in. I saw a lot of kids that way in my event. Kobe Buffkin that just played for the Hawks now. All of those kids, I've seen them from 9, 10, 11 years old go on to play. Never would have guessed they would have been one to go on to the NBA. But awesome. Chris Webber's was already quite popular at that point when he got there. But
is there, you might have honestly already answered it right there. Is there a certain game that really sticks out to you after all these years? A championship game, maybe a game winner that happened, anything like that?
Probably the one of the best games was a Melvin McLaughlin team in Belding, where we were going to 20 and he scored 19 by himself. And the crowd had gathered around, and he always chose a team not quite as good as some of the other teams because most of the people knew he was going to shoot every time.
Yeah, wanted a challenge.
He could shoot from way out there, and oh my God. So I can remember that particular game where he scored 19 out of 20 and they won, and the crowd almost carried him off the court. I had a few incidences like that. I've just had some really interesting run-ins with people that I never would have guessed either were going to be famous players or whatever, but they were just a lot of fun times over the years with this stuff like that.
You know, we just come out of kind of a tough era, Scott, with COVID. How did you guys deal with COVID? You know,
that hit us. That was 2020. We literally had no tournaments.
Mm-hmm.
And when you're in special event business, it's a seasonal cash flow totally.
Yeah.
And oh my gosh, I honestly scratch my head not knowing. We had a lot of federal monies come, a lot of state monies, a lot of other people came and helped. It was amazing that we made it through with no tournaments, but we did. Prior to that, 2019, I had 40 tournaments. And this year I got 27. So I'm still recovering to get my number up closer to 40 or 50 tournaments. It's really, really taken a toll over the years, but it's amazing that we were able to make it through it. I mean, it just by the grace of God, and a lot of people that love Macker really are into Macker.
Yeah.
Like Macker Man tattoos on their body. I mean, there's some strange stuff. These people are really into it.
Got to be honest, I'm surprised Ted doesn't have a Macker Man tattoo across his back.
Should.
I mean, I'll be honest. I love Gus Macker too. It's been a while since I've played, but now that my nephew's getting into it, like I've said a few times now, it's kind of revitalized that love for Gus Macker. It's just such a cool experience. And I remember, again, going back to kind of Jared's question, memorable people, the former NBA player that played at Eastern Michigan, Earl Boykins.
Oh yeah,
he had he had like an AAU team. They would travel around the country and play in different tournaments and stuff. And I remember when I was playing, they were always in top men's, of course, but there was always the Earl Boykins team was playing at Gus Macker. And it was like the biggest deal. You would go to top men's and watch his team play. And like you said, 10 people deep right there on the beach. It was just people all around that center court watching the Earl Boykins team play. And that was always a cool experience. You kind of laid it out. I had a question, a friend that I actually played with on those teams. He fired off a few at me to maybe throw out. You've kind of answered a few of them about infrastructure, the city kind of telling you guys where the courts are going to be.
Yeah.
But one that I thought that was interesting, and you've kind of answered it a little bit, but what's been one of the bigger challenges with the tournaments as far as maybe not letting it get too big, not letting it get out of control? Has it been the kids teams? Has it been the adult teams? You know, like you said about the physical play. Has it been the parents? You know, you hear about little league parents, you know, kind of take the fun out of things. What's kind of been one of the bigger challenges with, you know, keeping everything the original mission of what you guys had with Gus Macker?
I think the adult teams are probably the area of the tournament that's not very fun for people to come up on and watch.
Yeah.
We've been able to handle the parents. There's still issues with parents, and some of the parents are so carried away that Bobby or Jimmy are going to be in the NBA immediately and stuff. Right. And so there's a lot of that going on. And we see a lot of AAU type teams and so forth that are coming to our tournament that are very, very good. But I think the adult teams was the hardest phase, because when we went to officiating, that move was over a 1 to 5 year period. Not all of my tournaments went to that immediately because it cost a lot.
Yeah.
The cost to do a Macker of the general person on the street would be amazed at how much it costs to do one of ours. That stopped my growth a little bit past COVID. So I was at 40. A lot of cities dropped because they couldn't afford to do it. And they used COVID and said, well, now COVID's shutting us down. We're not going to probably come back. Mm-hmm. So I've gotten hundreds of requests. They just see how much it costs to do a Macker. And that's kind of part of the problem. Hiring the officials was that move that cost everybody. So to keep it clean like that, and the adult player did not enjoy us putting an official out there because most of them had adapted their game to call them their own and didn't want that other person out there who they went to regular games in a gym and didn't like anyway.
Right.
They didn't like that at all. By the way, that player that played at DePaul is David Booth. You guys go look up a guy named David Booth.
I remember him.
6'7", 6'8", but could play. He was probably the best offensive player I'd ever seen in my life play in a Macker. Awesome. I mean, he was just fun. His skin and bones at his college, post-college. Played in the NBA, played CBA a little bit and stuff like that. But and he's now working for the NBA. He's like a scout on somebody's team.
When you look back on it, sorry, Matt. When you look back on it, is there like a certain? You mentioned coming some of these big tournaments. You've had these big games, 10 people wide around the court. I mean, it's just crazy to think about. It started in your driveway. Was there ever a real like kind of? Maybe it was a SI article that was written about you. Was there a pinch me moment where you kind of was like, "Wow, I really did like kind of help build this and made this into what it is now? This huge tournament that's on a national scale, statewide scale." Was there ever a big moment like that for you?
Well, it was when we were running those 5,000, 5,400 team tournaments in Belding, and we only lived like 10 blocks away, and you drive the golf cart and come down over the hill and see what they thought was 100,000 people in Belding at that time. I mean, those times were probably where you pinched yourself and went, this is not real kind of thing. Yeah.
Step back, think about that, listeners. 5,400 teams, 4 players on a team in Belding. For a weekend. I mean, I was part of that in the early 90s. You know, Belding and Gaylord were the 2 must that I played in because I got relatives that live up north, and it's just a festival. You know, it was just incredible, and it continues on. It's just a amazing accomplishment by you, Scott, and your team there. I mean, we can't say enough praise for what you've done, and 50th anniversary. So what do we got to look forward to moving ahead?
Well, I think the big thing for us is to try to get that number closer to 50 tournaments too, again, which right now, if you look at my schedule, out of 27, tournaments. I think 15 are in Michigan. I mean, we could
Right.
go anywhere in Michigan and run a tournament right
Yeah.
now, but we lost kind of our following. Not that they don't want tournaments. It's just those groups have fallen by the wayside in Ohio, Indiana, Illinois, and Wisconsin. We don't got quite as many there. We have a lot of interest. It'll be interesting to see if we get those up. So for us, it's to grab that number back up and get it viable. I'm at an age now, and everything's pretty interesting. My team that travels, I have a lot of retirees now on my team, traveling from city to city, or bankers or retired teachers or what have you on my team, where 5-10 years ago, they were all college kids.
Right.
Now you don't have as many college kids working. They don't want to work that hard.
Right.
They like to travel, but I don't know if they're into it that much. They don't really have the Macker bug. Like,
Yeah.
there's few that do, but wow, these guys that are, I can't imagine how I'm going to get that much of my future, is to figure out how I can bring some of the youth into my organization that want to stick with it and see it go to the next level. Because I'm going to be 68 this summer, and I could think I can do it forever, but I'm got to be realistic. I don't know that I'm going to be able to do
Yeah.
it. forever.
Well, I
It's
can
kind
see
of,
it. I
it's
can
kind
see
of
it.
like Ted with this podcast.
Exactly.
You know, he says he wants to keep doing it, but we know there's going to come a day where he tells Jared and I, you know what, guys, unless we're recording at 7 a.m, I'm not going to be able to do this.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think it's one of those two guys that'll bail first. I like this.
Yeah, you'll keep
It's
doing it.
it's
Ted.
easy. It's
Yeah.
easy.
I was
Hey,
going to bring up before, I don't know if Ted or Jared got anything. I have to share this for anyone watching on YouTube. We share this podcast on YouTube also. I got to share this photo, this little collage, I guess I put together of us guys. So obviously you can tell you can tell the pictures that are from Ted's days.
Yeah.
yeah.
So the two on the bottom are from my days up there in Ludington. The one up there with the little guys, that's Jared. It's not a Gus Macker, because Jared, like you said, he didn't actually play in a Gus Macker. That's a tournament back in our
Figured that.
hometown. But so yeah, those are some throwback 3-on-3s from the 3 Point Podcast guys.
our three views. Well, listen, Scott, I mean, this has been a blast catching up with you. I mean, we're all fans of Gus Macker. Hey, maybe Matt has some connections and there'll be a 30 for 30 or an E60 on Gus Macker. You never know. Not a bad idea.
Could be a good idea.
For
That would be
real.
a lot of fun.
Yeah,
would
but
be
we
cool.
appreciate the time, Scott. We'll catch up with you down the road, and best way for our listeners to see what's going on with Mackerville and maybe how to participate and join one of the tournaments.
Make sure they go to macker.com.
Perfect.
And I always leave everybody with work on your game.
Yep.
Even me, you sent it in my email. I'm always
done.
working, always
Yeah.
working. We appreciate it, Scott. Thanks for the time, man.
Thank you, guys. Take care.
All right.
Are you ready to take your brand to the next level? Look no further. Introducing AZee Branding Solutions, where we help grow your brand from A to Z. At AZee, we're committed to helping businesses and organizations like yours reach new heights. Our full-service print and digital branding agency is your one-stop destination for all things branding. Need a stunning web or graphic design that captures your essence? We've got you covered. Want captivating social media content that engages your audience? Done. And that's not all. We're experts in video production and photography, ensuring your brand tells a compelling visual story. Plus, we specialize in screen printing and embroidery, turning your brand into wearable art that speaks volumes. Whether you're a startup or an established business, AZee is here to transform your brand dreams into reality. Ready to grow with us? Partner with AZee today and experience the difference. Visit our website at www.az.co or give us a call at 1-844-360-AZEE. AZee Branding Solutions, where your success begins.
Jacobs Insurance Agency has served Shiawassee County and the surrounding areas since 1977. Just like 3 Point Podcast, we've had 3 generations: Gary Jacobs Sr., Gary Jacobs II, Brian Jacobs, and myself, Noah Jacobs, serving our community with offices in Waterford and Owasso on M21, just west of Home Depot. Stop in or go online to jacobsinsurance.com to get a quote or get your questions answered by our team. Jacobs Insurance is a proud supporter of our local schools and the proud sponsor of the Prep Spotlight. Insure everything, local, independent, and trusted. It's our family working together to protect yours. That's the Jacobs way.
All right, guys, great stuff catching up with Scott. I had a couple other notes. I was going to bring up my favorite, the OJ story, but I decided I better not since I already talked about that. But he might have got a kick out of that, the ride up to Gaylord, But it was
Oh, was that for a Gus Macker or? Why does it always come back to OJ, man? Yeah, I think. Thank God you didn't bring it up. Thank you.
I forgot about the whole OJ connection. That's when the car chase was happening. I thought you meant you were just going to ask him his thoughts on
his
OJ.
thoughts on OJ. No. But I'll tell you what, it was a big part of my life there in the early to mid 90s. I mean, Gus Macker was just a blast, and he's 100% right that it got too physical. I mean, that ended up being part of our strategy. If you want to talk to your nephew, the good strategy we had, we weren't very tall, but we could shoot the ball pretty decent.
Yeah.
So we would drive, penetrate, kick it out for the 2 points instead of 1. You can rack up some points in a hurry if you can nail that 2 ball. And
that's what you have to figure out. 3-on-3 basketball is very different than being good at 5-on-5, high school basketball or whatever, college basketball. You have to have a strategy. And it was, like I said, when we were talking to him, the days when I was playing, it was becoming that. It was just muscle guys around, push around, call fouls. There was almost a fight every game, it seemed like. I mean, we still had a ton of fun, but it was getting to the point where there would be teams that were basically just football players out there trying to win a Gus Macker.
Yeah, it definitely took away some of the fun.
Right.
I will say those atmospheres, like he's telling the story about the greatest game he ever saw, how I'm blanking on the guy's name. Apparently some guy that could just shoot the lights out. Like how he assembled kind of a crappy team around him, basically with the assumption I'm going to take every freaking shot in our games.
Right.
Like, how do you not love those type of stories? And I mean, we've all been there, whether it's at the playground, whether you guys have actually been in this tournament where it just really kind of is basketball at its purest form. So what a great tournament. What a great conversation. I mean, you can listen to that guy talk for hours.
The purest form too, because I mean, you did play in a 3-on-3, Jared, but Ted, you definitely remember you play on, sometimes the road is like, or there's like potholes in the road, or especially on the shores of Lake Michigan, there's a nice breeze coming off the lake.
The wind.
Right. So you have the elements to deal with.
Too. And you played in the rain. The only time it was postponed at all was if there was lightning in the area. Other than that, you played in all conditions. So good stuff there with Scott. We appreciate him taking out the time. Well, we'll be right back with our prep spotlight right after this. All right, guys, time for the prep spotlight presented by Jacobs Insurance Agency, and kind of a quick one tonight, but we'll start in track and field. Corunna boys won the Chesaning Track and Field Classic, winning 7 out of the 17 events. Tarek Bauer set a new school record in the 100 meters at 10.77 seconds, beating Kevin Zielinski's school record previously to that, 10.8. That was set in 1995. So good job there by Tarek. He might even shave off a few more tenths before this season is over. Lucas Curran won the 400, Jackson Stroud the 800, Alan Merva took home the prize in the discus, and Tarek's brother Wyatt won the long jump. Cavs also won 2 relays. Chesaning senior Jordan Nixon went 12'6" in the pole vault to take first place. On the girls' side, Owasso pole vaulter Libby Summerlin ruled going an even 10 foot. In baseball, Owasso swept over at Elsie 13-1 and 8-4. Blake Binger had 3 hits in game 2 for the Trojans. In softball, speaking of the Trojans, Owasso swept Corunna, outscoring the Cavs 40-0 in a doubleheader. Ouch. That hurts. Freshman Haley Caswell needed only 56 pitches in game 1, 18-0 win. So jeez. Trojans and Joellen Smith, from what I understand, young team. I think she starts 3 freshmen, but they're just reloading up again. And finally, in golf, Owasso's Ryan Dahl took home medalist honors at the Dick's Sporting Goods Invitational at Perry's Glen Briar Golf Club. So the prep spotlight presented by Jacobs Insurance Agency, and we'll wrap this.
Let me throw one out there real quick.
Yeah,
I got to give my Perry Ramblers update with my nephews there. I heard tonight, we're recording on Monday night, they swept Potterville in doubleheader, kind of similar to that Owasso Corunna score. A doubleheader sweep. They won the first game 15-0, second game 18-4. So 2 mercy wins for Perry over Potterville. Perry Ramblers, they're playing pretty well.
Yeah, they are. And what's your nephew's last name? I have to keep an eye out for that.
Yeah, Burns. So Brady Burns and Eli Burns. Yeah.
Okay. Very good. All right. That is the prep spotlight. We'll be back with our sports potpourri right after this. All right, guys, we had a nice long chat with Scott McNeal, so let's keep this a little bit tight. But you got the NBA playoffs and the NHL playoffs going on. I know we're digging in deep watching the NBA, and we were talking off air. Lakers lost a tough one to the Nuggets. That's a tough draw for LA.
Yeah, there was the whole, Lakers were in the play-in, and there was the whole debate of if they should lose the first play-in game
Mhm.
and then win the second play-in game because they would have been matched up with OKC, the Thunder, if they would have done that. But that I feel like that's just playing with like the basketball gods. You don't want to go out there and intentionally lose.
No way.
It's a tough matchup. I mean, we were talking about it before we started recording. The Lakers are really good, but the Nuggets are just that much better than everyone in the West. I mean, I think the Mavs might be able to give them some trouble if Luka and Kyrie really get going. The Thunder, the Timberwolves, two really good teams, but I feel like they're not quite there to beat the Nuggets. So it's going to be tough for the Lakers. The thing that it always comes down to, too, that you guys know, the Lakers are good, but can they beat the Nuggets 4 times, to win a series?
Right. No.
They might be able to win 1 or 2. I don't know if they can beat the Nuggets 4 times.
Nuggets are so good.
Yeah.
I mean, I'd be shocked, honestly, if they didn't make it to the finals. I'd be shocked if the Celtics didn't meet them in the finals. Those just seem like two teams head and shoulders above the rest. It's a little bit depressing. I think we had this conversation last year in the same series against the Nuggets, where it's kind of like, man, LeBron's sort of showing his age.
Yeah.
It's just he isn't. He's not the best player anymore, and so it's kind of your mind plays tricks on you. You're watching as the Nuggets in Game 1 are going on this run. You're like, when's LeBron gonna put his foot down and get a couple back-to-back buckets to end this run? He just doesn't have that in the tank anymore. So that's been maybe my biggest takeaway is it's for lack of a better term, it's depressing watching them play sometimes because, man, that's my go. I don't know basketball without him playing in these games.
Right.
That's all I've ever known my whole life. And it's always been him at the top. It's not like he's just been playing in these games, always been the best player. So it's just been a little bit weird seeing some of these games take place where Jokic, it's like, wow. It's like, how can you stop this guy every time up the floor? They get a great look. The Lakers, on the other hand, are like, pulling teeth trying to get balls to go through the rim. It's just a tale of two different teams and two different players at different stages of their careers, really.
Yeah, it's the end of an era for sure with LeBron. I mean, what a career for sure. I mean, he may come back for another year, but he's definitely not quite the same. It's the endurance thing. He has 38, 39-year-old legs. You don't get that back, in basketball, play after play. Now we know about Joker. Who is the heir apparent, would you say, to be the face of the NBA? Is it him for the next 5-6 years, or is there any younger player maybe we need to keep an eye out for?
I mean, it's kind of crazy, but Luka he's only in his he's like 22, 23 years old because he came into the league when he was so young. I don't know if he would be like face of the league, like you're saying,
right?
Because I don't know. It doesn't, even with like Jokic, it doesn't seem like those guys are like face of the league type of guys.
They're not American, right? They're from overseas.
That might be.
It's a difference.
Yeah.
I mean, I think the big guy people throw out is Anthony Edwards. I mean, he had a big moment with KD, kind of almost a passing of the torch. I think Jokic is I guess it's like Jokic is the best player, and I think he's going to be the best player for some time now. But technically, the face, the guy that sells sneakers and all that sort of things, I think it's Anthony Edwards. I mean, he's unbelievable, crazy athlete, determined, trash talks, has flair. Like, I really think he's going to be the one next 3-4 years. Like, wow, you got to watch this guy every time he's playing, almost.
Yeah, it'd be cool. It's a shame that Zion keeps getting hurt because when he's healthy, he is so fun to watch, and he obviously had the huge and like social media following, everything when he went into Duke, and then just injuries he has not been able to stay healthy. I think he maybe would be if he could stay healthy, but it will be interesting because it's all those guys. Steph kind of on his way out, still playing really well, of course, but at the other side of his career, Kevin Durant, obviously we've talked about LeBron. There's like all these guys that, I mean, they're some of the greats of all time. Even Jared's guy, Chris Paul, like some of these
old
timers are like on their way out. It's the young guys coming up.
Brunson's pretty good for the Knicks too.
I love
isn't he?
Brunson. He's my favorite player
Yeah, he's
outside of
good.
LeBron.
Really good.
How do you not love his game?
No kidding.
It's poetry. It really is, and that's such a fun. I mean, they're called themselves what, the Nova Knicks. It's like a lot of players who clearly are like really good friends. Josh Hart, Brunson. I know McNeal Bridges for the Nets wants to end up playing for them. It seems like any time now, if he can get a trade done. But I got to pivot gears real quick, and this is more so maybe just
Yeah.
shows how much the NFL is king. I mean, the biggest news story, sports story of the week for me, and I think for a lot of us, was the Lions brand new uniforms.
Yeah.
I mean, it's ironic. It's ironic. You know, people will say, "Oh, well, they're just uniforms." Like how hard is it to mess them up? I mean, look at the Broncos jersey release today. Absolutely effing atrocious. The Lions, it seemed pretty obvious to go back to those kind of retro classic look. But a lot of teams don't listen to the advice of the fans, and that's the thing with this Lions organization franchise. Since the new owner has taken over, it seems like they've nailed every step on the field, off the field, jersey release, season ticket holders, everything. It's like, just what a great franchise we have, and what a great job they did with those uniforms. Do you guys have any notes on them? I loved every one of them.
Yeah, the only note I have is I do like that they came back for the black. I like that. And the other note I had from the picture that I saw, they have the white jersey with the blue pants. I like the all white better than that look.
Yeah, I could agree with that. The all white is just such a cool look, whether it's basketball, baseball, football. It's just such a classic look. But I agree. I mean, Jared, you basically laid it out. Everyone has been saying that since they've been saying we're going to have an alternate uniform. We're going to change the helmet. We're going to do whatever the Lions are going to do. It was go back to those early 1990s Barry Sanders jerseys, just classic Lions. They always wear the ultra throwbacks on Thanksgiving. I
love those.
Those are super cool. But that's like a Thanksgiving uniform.
Yeah.
That's almost like keep that on Thanksgiving. That's it.
Yep.
Your classic away, or whether they're going to wear them home or away, I don't know. The Barry Sanders blue. That's what they should have went with. They did it. You've got the cool black. That's kind of like for the kids, the modern, black with the blue pants, or you can go black on black. So do that. But no, you laid it out. Ever since Brad Holmes took over and Dan Campbell, they've been knocking everything out of the park. And it's like almost, Ted, it'd be like for you, I wonder, it's almost crazy to see that the Lions are getting things right.
Yeah,
So
everything.
It makes you think, like, with this draft coming up.
Oh, that was the other thing to talk about. The draft's coming up starting Thursday, Friday, Saturday. It's going to be incredible. I'm going to be out of town. I was planning on actually going down to the D on Thursday just to participate in that and hang out. But it's going to be incredible. That Detroit's going to do it up right, and they better be booing Goodell and keep that tradition alive.
Well, man, I didn't know you hated Goodell, but
it's just
sure
part of the fun.
That's a tradition. Yeah, it's good. I've been thinking about it. Like, I've been racking my brain on the best way to attack going to the draft. It's going to be a shit show trying to get out of there. It's going to be a shit show trying to get there. So I've been racking my brain. Like, what is the best way for me to get there, have a great time, get some beers flowing, and then get home safely. It's been boggling my mind now. I don't know. It's going to be a shit show. I think I just have to accept, hey, I might be there till 4 a.m. because I can't get a ride home, but it'll be worth it. It's going to be awesome.
The big thing, and I mean, I could look real quick, I'm sure you've looked ahead, is the weather. Is it going to be nice in Detroit this weekend?
That's a great question. I'm doing this off my phone. Does anybody have a way to search?
That's always the big thing.
That's a great question, to be honest. I should have looked that up probably a week ago.
Let's see.
But no, it's like I'm debating. Do I want to watch it in a bar? Do I want to actually be there?
It's looking like a good weekend, by the way. Looking like a good weather weekend.
Love it. It should be an awesome time. I would be lying if in the back of my head, just how we've been kind of kicked down so many times, the state of Michigan, right. Detroit. Could things go wrong? I don't know. I mean, we saw the little sign that they unveiled on the interstate, I-94, I believe, and it's like people are shitting on that. It's like, I just hope it goes smoothly. If this was the NBA draft, I'd be really nervous. The NFL just does everything right. They don't leave a single stone unturned. So I'm sure it'll just be an awesome event for the city, for the NFL, for everybody.
Sorry, go ahead, Ted.
I was just going to say, you brought up the sign, the Detroit sign, which people are losing their mind over. But did you see the one I tweeted that said Warren? Some guy just built one in his yard on
cardboard.
That was pretty classic.
Yeah. No, it's cool. I was just going to say it's cool to go into a draft, an NFL draft, like you said, where as Michigan fans and Lions fans, we can actually legitimately be excited. It's not as Lions fans, I hope we get that number 1 pick or whatever. Like, we're building on a team that was in the NFC Championship last year. This is exciting. As Michigan fans, national champions, we're going to see 16, 20 guys from last year's team being drafted this year. Like, this is actually like sit back and legitimately enjoy this draft. I can't wait to watch it.
If people are bitching, and I was the guy bitching last year about our draft picks, I will not do it this year. I don't care if they take a kicker in round 1. The way their track record and how they've been drafting, if you are being skeptical of it, like that's just what we do on podcasts and 97.1 whoever. But listen, just trust whatever they take. Like you said, it's just like let's have fun. Whoever they take, it's a win. The one thing I did see is my ideal draft for the Lions is bolstering the offensive line in round 1. And this was my favorite mock that I saw. I mean, you kind of take the mock drafts that you like and you run with them as like being like, this is what's going to happen. Nobody knows. Keon Coleman, Florida State, former Michigan State wide receiver, now at Florida State, had a hell of a season. I saw him being mocked to the Lions in round 2.
Ooh.
That's my dream draft. Offensive lineman 1. I don't care who. Give me somebody with some grit. I trust Dan Campbell to pick the right guy in the trenches. And then give me Keon Coleman in round 2. And I'm a happy camper.
I would think he's a first rounder, but
I think he's been kind of teetering back and forth between first and second round. So again, it's a mock draft. Who knows?
I know.
That's what I saw is that he was mocked to go to the Lions round 2. So
it could be interesting. Receiver could be interesting because obviously, St. Brown is there. He's the number 1, but they didn't bring Josh Reynolds back. So are they going to draft that number 2? They have Donovan Peoples-Jones, but he's kind of just a, number 3, 4 type of guy. So yeah, they might draft a receiver, but like you said, I'm cool with whatever they do. They've been nailing all these picks anyway. So
it's like the first time ever that they go into the draft, and like you said, maybe other than a kicker, they don't need a starter. They don't need to draft a starter. That's unreal.
Drafting for depth is such a cool feeling.
It is. Before we wrap up, we talked a little bit about Michigan, and the big story is, where's JJ going? Is he going to go to the Washington, or is he going to go to Minnesota?
His odds have jumped way up to be number. I think he's like plus 900 to be the second pick. I don't know shit about the draft, but to me, it reeks of like a smoke screen. I don't know if they're trying to get the Giants to maybe make a trade. If the Giants it seems like the Giants were the first team that said, this is our guy, we really want him. I'm wondering if that's what that is. It's maybe kind of more mind games than anything. Like, if you want JJ, we're going to take him, but you're going to make a trade up and come get him at number 2. I wouldn't be surprised if he goes 2. I just don't think it's going to be to the Commanders.
Right.
Yeah.
Where do the Jets draft? Because I see they just got rid of Wilson, and they need somebody behind Rodgers. Rodgers only going to last another year. Right?
I love your backup court. You always
learn a year.
Quarterback. It's an important position, yes, and we've seen that time and time again. Chad Henne getting the Kansas City Chiefs over the Browns a couple years ago in the playoffs. I don't know if you're the Jets. They're in a win now situation. I think I'd be sick to my stomach if I'm a Jets fan. They take a quarterback. It is what it is. You got to win now. It's Super Bowl or bust this year. So I get what you're saying. Long term, it would make sense to draft kind of the next guy. But what are you telling Aaron Rodgers where he comes to your team? He has the injury last year, and now it's like we're already building for the future. This is supposed to be a win now squad. So
yes, I guess I see your point there. Also, Michigan.
While I wouldn't want to see it because Minnesota, obviously the Lions see them at least twice a year.
Right.
It seems like Minnesota would be a great opportunity for JJ McCarthy because they signed Sam Darnold, who's not like one of the best quarterbacks in the league, but he's a veteran. So JJ wouldn't be expected day one to go in and be the starter. Minnesota has a lot of really good receivers, weapons. They have a good offensive staff. So they play indoors, in the stadium up there. So I wouldn't want to see him go to Minnesota, but it seems like that really would be a great place.
Yeah. And honestly, Ted, I thought when you were teeing up Michigan, I thought you were going to talk about the hoops program. Listen, I know you don't win championships in April, May, but I think Dusty May, from everything I've seen online, the recruits he's gotten, transfer portal, he's been hammering it hard.
Real hard.
I love what I'm seeing. I really think they're due for a big season. Like, honestly, we've kind of talked negatively, or at least I have, about Michigan football. I think they're maybe headed toward some rocky waters the next couple of years. I think Michigan basketball is riding the roller coaster up to the top. I really think Dusty May is the right guy for the job. I saw one video, and I'm making a mountain out of a molehill with this stupid video, but he had a video where basically he went around to all the different frat houses
Right.
in Michigan, and I'm like, this is awesome. Like, I don't know what exactly he accomplished with this, other than a great social media video.
Yeah.
But I just imagine being a frat kid. You're sitting there. It's ironically enough, it was on 420. So imagine what was going on in those places on that day. And all of a sudden, the Michigan basketball head coach shows up and gives you a nice impassioned speech about how he needs you guys in the stands. I really think we're due for a good basketball season. I can't wait for it, man. We're all Michigan hoops fans at heart. It's been tough the last couple of years.
Yeah.
It does seem like Dusty May is more of a John Beeline type of coach. Like he's proven it. He's come from smaller schools, obviously at FAU, he had some success, and he's building with basically all transfers. He only had a couple guys on the roster left from last season. It's a roster full of transfers that are like really good, not blue chip 5-star. They're going to be one and done type of guys. It's just really good college basketball players. The big thing is, how long is it going to take them to gel? Because you've got a whole roster of 12 dudes, 15 dudes that have never played with each other. So, they'll figure it out. I'm sure it'll be fine, but I think that'll be something to keep an eye on that first month of the season. Are they clicking? Do they know rotations? All that kind of stuff.
Nowhere to go but up.
Yeah, nowhere to go but up, and it's got to be exciting for sure.
Yep. Looking forward to it. Looking forward to the Wolverines, even though they may falter a little bit. Harbaugh did go get his 15-0 Michigan tattoo. That was kind of cool. I like that. And they had their had their spring game. You think Orgy's going to be the guy, or do you think he's going to get some competition?
I don't know. It seems like it. There's that Davis Warren seemed to have some good throws and stuff. But if it is Orgy, I think we're about to see. You remember Sharon Moore was the head coach in that Penn State game,
right? When
they ran every single time in the second half. And Orgy's not necessarily the best passer, so we might see more of those kind of game plans.
I'm okay with that.
48 runs, 12 QB runs, and only 8 pass attempts.
And this is kind of maybe stupid to say, but I really I don't know if you can always say this, Jim Harbaugh first year. I don't know if you could come to a conclusion on what his tenure would look like. I really think this year it's gonna be a great test for Sharon Moore. I think I think there is talent in that building. It's gonna be one hell of a schedule. It's gonna be tough to kind of transition from Jim Harbaugh's program to his program. But I think they have enough pieces to really have a good year this year, and he might blow me away. And I might be wrong on the fact that they might be tracking downward, but I really think the guy who you're going to be like, wow, and this isn't some crazy take, Donovan Edwards. I think he had 2 touchdowns, 100 yards rushing in the spring game. Don't be surprised if he has 2 or 3 games, maybe on big stages like a Texas game, week 2, where he breaks the game open with 200 rushing yards, 2-3 TDs of 50+ yards. I think he's going to be dynamic to watch on a weekly basis. So I can't wait for that. Yeah,
it's going to be important for the Wolverines to get off to a good start, especially with that schedule they have. If they get a little confidence and get 4-0, 5-0, they could have another special season, but we'll see. We'll be ready for it. All right, guys, we're getting ready for the dog days of summer. Had a nice podcast here to get us rolling. Scott McNeal, that was good talking with him. And, let's call it a podcast. We want to thank Memorial Healthcare's Wellness Center. Talk to a rep, go online, see what discounts are available for memberships. Get yourself healthy. Get in shape. Details at memorialhealthcare.org. Also want to thank our other great partners. They include AZee Branding Solutions, Jacobs Insurance Agency, Kori Associates Real Estate Services, Nelson House Funeral Homes, Rivals Taphouse and Grille, and Success Group Mortgage and Servicing. By the way, Chi-Town, our favorite country band, they got a road trip coming up May 9th to the 11th, backed by popular demand in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania at the Tequila Cowboy. If you want a little road trip, go to the Steel City, great venue, and they step it up when they go play the Tequila Cowboy. So you got some time to put it on your schedule. And again, I want to thank Scott McNeal, Mr. Gus Macker himself. We had a lot of fun with that conversation. Good guy, man, and just a great event. So definitely check out Macker. There it is. There's
one
the
more
picture.
time. Let me put this up there.
Just when you talk about the locations, I don't know what's going on in the bottom right, but it looks like it's right in the middle of a neighborhood. It looks freaking awesome.
That's right by the beach.
Yeah. Unbelievable.
Yeah. And 5,400 teams at Belding back in the day. Think about that crazy. In the neighborhoods. So thanks to Scott again. Peace and love, everybody. Be kind. Thanks for listening. We'll talk to you next time.